Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah, and today I'm doing a tier ranking of all the books I read in 2023. This is much faster than doing a quick review for each one. I'm just going to let you know what I thought about it, if I thought it was worth it, and let's dive right into it. Alrighty, so the categories I created were top tier, it's a new favorite, OMG, this is my entire personality now. The next one is loved it, nothing more needs to be said. Middle tier is liked it, but it's not my Roman Empire. Fourth tier is it was just meh. We all have those books. And then the last tier is nope, I wish I didn't sit through this. Didn't like it. Horrible. Would not recommend. So let's just dive right in. Okay. The first book we have here is The Plight Before Christmas. I really didn't like this book. This is a nope, I wish I didn't sit through this book. The main character was super unlikable. It wasn't cozy. It put me in a legitimate bad mood. Not a cozy Christmas rom-com. Wouldn't recommend. The next one is The Golden Spoon. This one's hard. I mean, this one I liked it. Yeah. I liked this one. It's like a low level because it wasn't overly complex. It wasn't anything crazy or special. It very much was a cozy mystery. But I knew that going into it. And I really liked that it was like a play on the Great British Baking Show or Great British Bake Off, whatever. So I loved that. It was a good time. I liked it. Then we have The Near Witch by V. Schwab. This was another one. I really liked it. It was one of V. Schwab's first books, and she's grown exponentially as a writer. So while I still enjoyed it, I feel like her newer works are just so much more fleshed out and special, really. But this one reads like a traditional fairy tale, which I loved that. It was kind of like a dark fairy tale. Lessons in Chemistry. This was just meh. This is one of my early reads this year. It was for my In Real Life book club. Honestly, I loved the chapters from the dog's perspective the most, and I wish I could have read the entire book from his perspective because the rest was kind of boring and it drug on. How to Survive Your Murder. I liked this one. It was a solid murder mystery. I guessed who the murderer was very quickly, and I was really bummed that I was right, but it is what it is. It was still fun. It read like a slasher movie, you know? It kind of reminded me of like Scream, which this would be a great Halloween book. Then I read A Deadly Education. Honestly, this was just meh for me. I mean, I kind of liked it, but at the same time, I haven't been dying to pick up the next one. I feel like the whole book was just repeating about how dangerous their magical school is. And I'm like, I get it. Everything in your school can kill you. What else? So, honestly, it could have been a novella, I think. Finlay Donovan Knocks Him Dead. I wish I didn't read this one. I didn't enjoy the first one, so I might as well just stick this one in here as well. The two Finlay Donovan books, the premise sounds fun. It's just not. They drag on. Nothing gets solved. It's a hot mess. Golden Sun. I loved this book. So Golden Sun really developed what was set in place in Red Rising and just like went above and beyond what I thought it would. The political intrigue, the strategy, the like war tactics that were used was so fun to read about, and I just ate it up. The Christmas Guest. I liked this book. It was a very solid novella, and for being a novella, it delivered. I was really skeptical because I feel like novellas in general, for me, just usually fall short, let alone a murder mystery novella. And on top of that, being Christmas themed, I was like, how is this gonna, I don't know. Honestly, this would be a loved it if it didn't have so many chapters that were written in like a diary perspective, because for me, the diary entries were really cheesy and like kind of cringy a little bit. And like, I think that was intentional. It was supposed to be from like a college girl's perspective, but like, I don't know. That part was kind of off-putting, and I didn't quite enjoy that as much as when it finally went back to a normal kind of narrative. But anyway, really enjoyed it. Would definitely recommend. Honestly, any time of year, but especially around Christmas. The Book Eaters. I hated this book. Like, that's harsh, but I really hated this book, and I wanted to like it. So this is a nope. I wish I didn't sit through this. I really didn't. I wish I would have DNF'd it. It was weird. It was bizarre. It didn't know what it wanted to be. The story was all over the place. Like, I have strong feelings about this one. Okay. Holiday Romance. I loved this one. It was so good. Oh. It's almost a new favorite, but not quite. Almost. The premise of this book was so fun. It was about these two people who live in the US. They're both from Ireland. So every Christmas, they wind up on the same flight, waiting in the same part of the airport to fly home on their 7-hour flight. And they become friends like over the years, traveling together. And it winds up being a love story. It's so cute. And I loved it. Silent Night by R.L. Stine. This was another, I wish I didn't read this one. It was really cheesy. It's not what I remember R.L. Stine being when I was a teenager, and maybe like I should just let the memories of like the Fear Street books live in my head as like what they were, not as what I would think of them now. But like the mystery was just so dumb. I don't know. The Final Empire. Oh boy, new favorites. It wasn't my entire personality, but it is a new favorite. I'll put it in loved it. We'll see. We'll see how the rest of the series unfolds. But The Final Empire is the first Mistborn book, and I loved it. I loved being introduced to these characters and this magic system, and the way Brandon Sanderson developed everything. Like, I get why he is like one of the top tier fantasy authors. It was great. Upgrade by Blake Crouch. This one was just meh. Honestly, I feel like if you've read one Blake Crouch book, you maybe have read them all. The main characters are very repetitive. The plot points are pretty repetitive. To me, I preferred Dark Matter over Upgrade. And they are similar enough that I feel like I can choose one or the other. Happy Place. This is a meh book for me, and I'm so sad to be putting it in this tier because I was so excited about this book. I love Emily Henry, and this did not deliver. I talked about this in my Worst Books of 2023 video. So even though it's not a nope, it is a meh. I'm glad I read it, but it didn't hit the way book lovers did. And my biggest issue with it is that the main problem of the entire book, the reason why there even is a book, could have been solved if the characters had just had an adult conversation. So, one last stop. Ugh. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. So Red, White, and Royal Blue is one of my all-time favorite books. I love that book. So when One Last Stop came out, I was so excited. I bought it immediately. It's been on my shelf for a while, but I finally read it this year. This is one where the relationship was like borderline stalkery, and that was so off-putting to me. And I didn't like the level of like obsession. I don't really like an obsession trope personally, so this was just not it. And I'm still excited for other Casey McQuiston books. Because like I said, Red, White, and Royal Blue is one of my all-time favorites. So I'm hoping this was a fluke and it was just a trope that wasn't for me. But we'll see. Lockwood & Co., The Screaming Staircase. This is a new favorite. I loved this book so much. It just was everything I was looking for in a haunted house book. And I've read so many flukes of ghost stories this year. And this was like, just like the perfect book for me. It read like a Scooby-Doo mystery. And honestly, I feel like that's the best way I can sell it. If that doesn't sell you, then I don't know what to tell you. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I really liked this book. I didn't love it only because to me it reads almost identical to The House in the Cerulean Sea. That is one of my all-time favorite books, and this was just way too similar. It was just kind of like the gender swapped version of it, and it was just way too similar, but I still really loved it. I loved the story, I loved the characters. It was cozy, it was sweet. I would still recommend, but just a personal thing. I don't like when books are too similar to other ones that came before them. Let's see. A Conjuring of Light. I loved this one. This was the ending to A Darker Shade of Magic, that trilogy. I felt like it wrapped things up perfectly. I will say, I also read the second book, A Gathering of Shadows. That one is a new favorite. I think that was my favorite of the entire trilogy. I absolutely love the characters. I love Lila Bard. She's my favorite female character, hands down. So those two fantastic books. Clown in a Cornfield. This book was so ridiculous. I just wanted a simple horror slasher book. Half of it was that. And then the explanation was so ridiculous. I was like, sir, this is what we went with. Really? Okay. The Unfortunate Side Effects of Heartbreak and Magic. This was just meh. This book, honestly, is a little bit on me for falling into the marketing tactics because it was described as practical magic meets Gilmore Girls. Like, say less. That sounds perfect. It was not that. It was very much like practical magic, very little like Gilmore Girls. Just because something takes place in a small town, you can't call it Gilmore Girls. Then we have The Naturals. Honestly, this was meh for me. It's borderline, I liked it, and meh. I don't think I'm going to be continuing on, so I think I'm going to put it in the meh category. But this one is very highly hyped on BookTube and BookTok. It's described as like a teen version of Criminal Minds, which is very accurate. It definitely is. It's a unique premise of these like gifted teens who are in a part of like this secret FBI team that solves like cold cases because they're like profilers and whatnot. And it is really interesting, but I just felt like it was rushed. I felt like all the characters felt flat for me, and that was the biggest thing. And I feel like this book really relied heavily on the characters and who they were and their like background, and so that was kind of a bummer. Next is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I loved this book. Grady Hendrix has such a unique way of writing horror where it's almost comical. In this book, he literally said, like, I wanted to pit my mom against a vampire, and the fight definitely is not fair, saying that his mom could absolutely take a vampire. So I just loved the idea of like these suburban moms taking on this immortal vampire. And it was just so goofy, so fun. Really dark at times. Definitely look for trigger warnings if you read this, but it's still a great book. None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This one, I liked it. I won't say I loved it. It was a solid thriller. I definitely didn't see some of the twists coming, and it kept me interested. Some of the plot points were kind of uncomfortable. I don't know. It was fine. Once Upon a Broken Heart. Hands down a new favorite. These books in general are a new favorite. I might as well drag The Ballad of Never After as well. And then A Curse for True Love. I'll put in Loved It because the first two were hands down my favorite of the trilogy. A Curse for True Love. Still really enjoyed it, but it's not quite to the level that the first two were. But yes, Once Upon a Broken Heart follows the events of Caraval, and these books are just so whimsical, so fun. I loved the characters. They are light. So if you're looking for a lighter fantasy, I would highly recommend these. The Pumpkin Spice Cafe is another one. I'll put it in meh. It was also described as being like the Gilmore Girls, and this one was a little bit closer, but not quite. I don't know. It was fine. It was a cozy read, I guess. Really forgettable, honestly. Didn't live up to the hype for me. The Fall of the House of Usher, also meh. This is the Edgar Allan Poe version. I read it in preparation for What Moves the Dead. I felt like Edgar Allan Poe spent half of the story talking about the look and feel of this like dilapidated manor, and then the last like chunk was quickly rushed about like what was happening to the people inside, and that's like the beef of the story. So that's why it's in meh. I do love Edgar Allan Poe, and this one just doesn't live up to some of his other ones. Speaking of What Moves the Dead, where's that one? This one is a new favorite. I loved this book. It's creepy, it's gothic, it's horror. It's a perfect fall read. I loved this book. Just the writing was fantastic. Just for the Summer. So this was an ARC I received. This book comes out in spring or summer, I believe. This book was so good, you guys. Oh my gosh. It's a new favorite. Honestly, I didn't think a romance author could outdo Emily Henry for me, and Abby Jimenez absolutely has. She has the level of banter and wit that I feel like Emily Henry has, but she gives her characters such depth, and like the other issues on top of like the fun kind of rom-com story, it just like hits so perfectly. So I loved this book, and I cannot wait to read more by her. Let's see, Arch Conspirator. I didn't like this book. I didn't get it. It was weird. It was boring. Yeah, I don't have much to say about that. Dial A for Aunties. I liked it. It was a very solid kind of murder mystery, cozy in a way. The premise is this girl accidentally kills her blind date and calls up her aunties to help hide the body. It's so goofy. It's so fun. I loved the banter between her aunties, her mom, like all these important women in her life all have big personalities. Also, I will say it's very unrealistic. Some of the tactics they use to cover up this murder and just would not work, but suspend disbelief for a little bit and just enjoy the ride because it's a mess in the best way. The Only One Left. I liked this one, but it doesn't stand up to other Riley Sager books for me, so I'm just going to put it in liked it. It was a very solid mystery. I liked going back and forth in timelines. I love when books do that because I feel like then I can piece together the mystery myself a little bit easier rather than just being completely surprised. Still didn't guess all the twists, guessed a few. It was a good time. Oh, Throne of Glass. Okay, so Kingdom of Ash is obviously the last book in the Throne of Glass series. I'm going to start with Throne of Glass. I'm going to put that in new favorite. This is my entire personality now. I love Selena. She is such a fun heroine to read about. She's a strong female and will take no criticism. Just kidding. She has flaws. But yeah, really, really enjoyed it. So Throne of Glass, absolute favorite book. Then we have the rest of the series. Let's see if I can even remember the order of these. Do I have all of them on here? I don't know. Let's see. Crown of Midnight. Also loved that one. Airfire, loved it, but it wasn't one of my all-time faves out of the series. Queen of Shadows, loved it. Empire Storms, loved it. Tower of Dawn, okay. I mean, still loved it, but like, honestly, I'm gonna put that one in meh. I really wish I would have just like, I wish I would have tandem read Empire Storms and Tower of Dawn. I don't like when we follow a set of main characters the entire time and then an entire 600-700 page book is related to somebody that I'm not invested in. And then Kingdom of Ash, I loved it, but it's not like an all-time favorite, especially out of the series, just because in my opinion, it was a long book. It was like literally 980 something pages, I think, and I don't think it needed to be. A lot of important things happened, and I love reading about these characters, but I was also like ready for the series to just end. And next, Silver Nitrate. I liked this one. It was a solid horror, not quite what I was expecting from Silvia Moreno Garcia. Granted, I've only read Mexican Gothic by her, which I absolutely loved. And I was expecting something kind of similar to that kind of like gothic, eerie, vibey sort of book. And this wasn't quite that. And it wasn't as spooky as I thought it was. It was more like urban fantasy leaning, I guess, or like magic realism, which I wasn't expecting. And I think that really threw me off. So I liked it, but not one of my favorites by her. My Best Friend's Exorcism. I loved this book so much. This was so fun. It's another Grady Hendrix, and basically it's about these two best friends. One of them gets possessed and the other's trying to exorcise the demon. I would definitely look up trigger warnings for this one as well. There's one scene in particular that's usually like a deal breaker for me in books, and I didn't know it was coming, so I will admit I just fully skipped over it. Anything to do with like animal cruelty is a hard pass. But I literally just skipped over that page, and it was fine. In my head, it didn't happen. So then we have Starling House. This one is also, is this a new favorite though? No, I loved this one. I wouldn't say it's a new favorite. I did really love this one though. This is kind of like a gothic, eerie tale and has like dark Alice in Wonderland vibes. And honestly, I think that's all you need to know. Would definitely recommend. In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife. Honestly, this one was just meh. This was very highly hyped all over the place as being a fantastic thriller. And I don't know. I did enjoy the fact that it followed like 5 or 6 friends, and each one of them like could have been guilty. So it's kind of like, which one did it? And I enjoyed that. The ending wasn't surprising to me, pretty predictable. And honestly, I forgot I read it until seeing it on my list. I was like, oh yeah, I did read that. So clearly didn't make an impact. The Fine Print, I liked this one. This one's all over BookTok as being like a super fun romance. It was fun. It takes place in kind of like a knockoff Disney World. I don't know, that made it kind of fun. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to continue on. Each book follows like a different brother in this like billionaire family. This one was fun. I'm just going to leave it at that. Anatomy of a Love Story. This one is a new favorite book. It was so eerie and kind of creepy, but like also had like really good commentary about like women's rights, especially in this time period, and how stifled women were. So like it's fun to see the main character kind of overcome that. It's got a really fun love story. There's like a love triangle at some points and a little bit of fantasy woven in. I'm really excited for the next one because I think the next one is going to really lean into the kind of like magical elements that were like sprinkled throughout the first book. So yes, would definitely recommend. I wish I could sell that book better, but just know it's so well written and just a great story. Red Rising. I will say I liked this one. My biggest gripe with this is this just reminds me so much of the Hunger Games and the Uglies series. It's like those two books put together. So because of that, I feel like it borrowed a lot from popular like dystopian YA books, which is interesting. This reads feeling a little bit like YA, but it is adult, which is, I don't know. So I will say Golden Sun is like exponentially better, and I heard the series does get better as it goes, so like that has been true. I would still recommend Red Rising for me personally. Again, I just struggle when books remind me so much of other books that I'm like, I don't think all of these ideas were your own, and I don't think you made them unique enough to not be like kind of ripping off ideas. Then I read Paper Girls. I really liked this. This was a graphic novel, and it reminded me a lot of like Stranger Things meets the X-Files. It was just so fun, and the art was beautiful. I loved the color scheme of it. So I'm really excited to continue on with this. Then we have the Agathas. I loved this book so much. It was a YA murder mystery that is kind of an ode to like Agatha Christie, and yeah, it was just a really solid read. Then we have My Roommate is a Vampire. I loved this book. This book is like very polarizing among the bookish community. People are like, oh, it's so cute, or people are like, no. I'm in the camp where I thought it was cute. I thought it was fun. It was quirky. It was lighthearted. I'm here for it. It's like a Halloween rom-com. I would recommend it. Then we have Divine Rivals. This is a new favorite. This is my entire personality right now. Okay, not really. I just loved this book so much. It was so beautifully written. The story was fantastic. I could just gush about this book. I loved it. It was my favorite book of the year. Then we have Ruthless Vows, which just came out, and I tore through it. It's the sequel. This is a duology, so it is a complete set, which is nice. We don't have to wait for any more books. But yes, just finished Ruthless Vows. It was just as good. Yeah, a really solid read. I'd give Divine Rivals 5 stars, Ruthless Vows 4.75, just because it was a little slow in some parts. But again, and that's me being like a little nitpicky. Then we have A House with Good Bones. I liked this one. This one was solid. I read it after What Moves the Dead. So, did I? Yeah. So my expectations were a little higher for this. And my biggest critique is there was like one event at the end where the whole time I was like, okay, yep, this makes sense. Okay, we're going this direction. That's crazy, but like I'm still on board. And there was one point where I'm like, okay, you lost me. This is not, no. I'm trying to stay focused. I'm trying to believe. Can't. Then we have Dead 11. Nope. I wish I did not sit through this. It had the promise to be such a good book, and it was supposed to be like kind of Lost, but with like horror elements. And I was so sold, and it just did not deliver. It was like 200 pages too long. The like meat of the book, nothing happened. It was the character was just going around in circles, and there was no payoff for those circles. So I have a lot of issues with that book, and I'm really bummed because I wanted to like it. Belladonna. I really loved this book. It was just, I read a lot of kind of like eerie gothic books this year, and I found like I like it. Like maybe I'm a gothic girly. I don't know. Is that a thing? Yeah, it was just it was a murder mystery. The main character kind of teams up with Death himself to solve this mystery, and it was, yeah, I liked it. There were some elements that made me, I have a few small issues with it, which is why it's not a favorite. It definitely was so close, though. So if you read this book and you want to talk about it, I'd love to talk about my issues with it, but ultimately I loved it. And then we have the Bridgerton, The Duke and I. I loved this book. It was just so solid. Honestly, you know what? This was a new favorite. There is a big scene in this book that I have a huge issue with, and I do have an issue with how it was dealt with. I don't think it was labeled as what it actually was, and I wish the author would have handled that better. But other than that, I loved being in the Regency era. I loved the ball gowns and the manners and the estates and the romance, and I'm really excited to continue reading on about the other Bridgerton siblings, and I think that's why I'm so excited, because I kind of don't love the main character after what she did in this book, but because it's following the other Bridgerton siblings, I am excited to read about them and read about their lives. So ultimately, I did love this book. So Legends and Lattes. Yes. This book opened the doors to cozy mysteries. No. This book showed me what a cozy fantasy was and what it could be and how much I loved it. I didn't realize this was even a genre, and now I want to immerse myself in all the cozy fantasies because I love fantasy and I love cozy things, and this was amazing. Like, it's about an orc who's trying to open up a coffee shop in a world where they don't know what coffee is. A latte is a completely foreign term, and she's trying to introduce all these weird new things to people that don't want to be introduced to new things. And it's such a good time. I love this book. I will take no criticism on it. Then we have Paris, the memoir. This is hard. It's hard to rate a memoir because it is someone's story. In terms of the writing, though, I would put it in meh. Because it was mediocre writing. The story was really sad, though. I will say that. Narrowed between. I did like it. I feel like I'm only thinking about putting in meh because I'm being a little petty about the fact that we haven't gotten our third book yet. And I wish this had teased something for the third book, and it didn't, but it was still fun to read about Bast and his history and kind of get an idea of like who he is as a character, because he's a very morally gray character. So it was fun. You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. Loved this book. It is like a summer camp slasher horror book. I don't need to say anymore. Wise Man's Fear. I liked it, but not like Name of the Wind. There was a chunk of this book where I was just kind of like, okay, let's move on. The writing was still fantastic. The character development, still fantastic. Still really enjoyed it, but not like Name of the Wind. It just did not compare to me. September House. No. This had the promise to be a good haunted house book, and I wound up reading so goofy. And I don't think that was the author's intention, and that's a bummer. Iron Flame, I liked it more than Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing was meh for me. I think because these books were so highly hyped, that's my biggest issue with it, because like it didn't live up to that hype for me at all. I don't know if I'm going to, part of me wants to continue. I'm going to continue on to the third and then make my decision. I'm not like super invested. I feel like I could go on a rant about these. I think they were rushed, and I think they had promised to be fantastic, but I think being rushed and the fact that they're signed for a 5-book deal, when do you have 5 books worth of content like planned and ready to go? I don't know. I'm thinking this might be kind of like a From Blood and Ash sort of situation. We'll see. Wrong place, wrong time. I really didn't like this book. I thought it was about like kind of like a Groundhog's Day sort of murder mystery thriller, and it was just the reveals just weren't that surprising. I didn't necessarily guess them, but when they were revealed, I was like, oh yeah, okay. I wasn't like, whoa, what? Which that's what I want. Babel, nope, did not like this book. It was so boring. I don't get the hype. At Home with the Horrors. I loved this book so much. It is a collection of short horror stories, and it was so fun. I ate it up. Would highly recommend. Nimona, I loved this. It was so fun. She basically like wiggles her way into being the sidekick to a villain, even though he doesn't want a sidekick, and she's just like, but you're gonna have a sidekick. Here I am. Hello. And it's amazing. Her character was so fun. Find Him Where You Left Him Dead. I really liked this book. I got it as an ARC, and it was just such a unique take. It was like a horror version of Jumanji, but like in the afterlife, kind of. So creepy, so weird. Really enjoyed it. Rock, Paper, Scissors. Didn't like it. I really did not like this thriller. I felt like it was very predictable, and yeah. Wild Card. I loved this book. So Warcross, fantastic. Wild Card, even better. Takes place in a world where there's this virtual reality game, and it's like super high stakes, and I loved the technology. I loved the world. I loved the characters. It was a great story. The Family Game. This one was meh. There were pieces of it that I really enjoyed. I guessed what was going on earlier than I wish I would have. A Psalm for the Wild Built. This was also meh. I'd heard good things. I just don't think I was in the right mindset to read it. It's one of those books that really like makes you think, and it's very philosophical, and I don't think I was looking for that when I read it. I don't know. Maybe if I pick it up again some other time, I would get it. I would have a different experience, because I feel like a lot of people say it's so beautiful, and like in some ways it was, but at the same time I was just bored. So, Spinning Silver. I didn't like this book at all. I was so bored, and people like really seemed to like it. I did not. Housemaid. Packs in every single thriller trope you can think of. Super cliche, super unbelievable. A lot of the characters were unlikable. I just would not recommend. Rivers of London. I liked this one. It was like Brooklyn Nine-Nine meets Supernatural. It was fun. I wound up not continuing the series, or I wound up reading the second one and then not continuing, because the main character really is kind of gross. Or I guess the way the author writes the main character, the way he talks about women is really gross, and I don't like it. And yeah. But the mystery was fun, and the premise was fun. So Rivers of London itself was a decent book. It was just a personal preference for me, and why I didn't like it. So those are my books that I read this year. So that's my wrap up. I'm so excited for 2024. I have big plans, and I have a lot of good books on the docket. So I hope you all have a great day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Use